What's up, guys? Ruppy here, and we've got a lot we need to talk about here. You're probably confused by the title of this video, and I wouldn't blame you. So, allow me to explain why the roster of the Columbus Swoo for the UNPL has gone from this to this. I know, that is quite a drastic change, as in, I've pretty much got an almost entirely new roster now. What the heck happened? Well, before I dedicate this video to what's basically Team Analysis 2 Electric Boogaloo, as I feel it's only fair to properly introduce my new team and what all our new pieces bring to the table, I should probably answer the question of how on earth we got to this point in the first place. So, the day I played my Week 3 battle with Kelly, while I was at work, I had a couple of people hit me up about potentially doing trades. The easier one of these to explain is my good friend Kyle A, who I have been lending a hand to in regards to thumbnail renders for quite some time now. He was curious if I'd be willing to do a Terra Captain trade of my Scyther for his Gligar. Around the same time, it's Danny Mac got into a conversation with me about a lot of potential moves, honestly. I don't remember exactly all the different trade possibilities we talked about and all the extra transactions we could each make along with it, especially when I mentioned to him the trade Kyle was looking to make with me as well. But as some of you who've probably been watching me for a while probably know, I'm usually not a fan of making transactions unless it's painfully clear I need to in order to address some glaring flaws with my team that are going to hinder me as the season goes on, such as the moves I made last season. Ultimately, I wanted to put any transaction talk on the back burner for the time being because, one, I was still at work when all these different ideas were being thrown my way, and actually focusing on doing my job was probably a smart idea. And two, I wanted to at least wait until I'd gotten my battle with Kelly out of the way, using the roster as I still had it, so I could respectfully give my Week 3 opponent my undivided attention. I'm sure I don't need to explain how that game ultimately turned out, and if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, so go ahead and check out the card up in the corner to see how it all played out. Ultimately, once the battle did finish, I'll admit I probably wasn't thinking too straight given how that game did play out, but there was also something else going on as well that very same day. A lot of people were in the middle of making a lot of moves, and as you'll probably see with a lot of the games coming up this week, there was a massive shakeup because quite a few of the coaches ended up doing a lot of roster shuffling. I feel these factors ultimately contributed to me letting myself get talked into making all these moves, which I'll go ahead and summarize on screen for you while I discuss it. For starters, I did make the trade with Kyle, sending Scyther over to him in exchange for Gligar. With Danny, I ultimately traded him Dragapult, Quaquaval, Overquill, and Sandaconda in exchange for Bloodmoon Ursaluna, Slowking, Noivern, Cryogonal, and Muck. Kyle and Danny both made other trades and transactions of their own after that, but once all of my trades were done, I, at the suggestion of a few people to better fit the new pieces I now had, then proceeded to drop Excadrill, Incineroar, Meloetta, Frogadier, and my newly acquired Gligar. Don't worry, Kyle actually ended up dropping the Scyther I traded him, so we're even. And picked up Infernape, Archaludon, Mimikyu, and Mabostiff. Last but not least, since I'd traded away both of my Terra Captains, I obviously needed to declare new ones. Cryogonal, I believe, was one of Danny's Terra Captains, so I used another transaction to change the Terra types I'd inherited from him to Ground, Electric, and Ghost. I ultimately decided to make Muck my other Terra Captain with my remaining points, and its Terra types are Flying, Dark, and Grass. I know, that was a lot, and I'll be honest, even now, I still feel iffy about making these moves. This roster does look like something that fits my usual playstyle a lot better, but I know I'm going to get roasted in the comments about some of these moves. I personally hate the fact that I let myself get talked into trading Dragapult away, because this will very likely be the one and only time I'll ever get lucky enough to have a high enough pick to try it in draft, and I feel like I'd barely scratched the surface of what I could do with it, not to mention a lot of the potential I feel I let slip through my fingers. But trying to keep a positive outlook here, I still have a lot of new potential at my disposal now, and I think I can make some magic happen with my new toys, especially since, as I said, I'm not the only one who apparently decided to use Week 3 to blow just about every move I pretty much had to put together an entirely new roster. Hope you all enjoy the Week 4 games just because of that potential alone. Anyway, now that I think I've covered how we got to this point and why it happened pretty well, let's actually go over the new team, shall we? I will say right now that I will not be talking about the two mons that actually survived the storm of transactions for my team, that being Whimsicott and Electros, just because I already said pretty much everything I needed to in my initial draft analysis at the start of the season. That said, let's go ahead and kick things off with Bloodmoon Ursaluna, who is actually the current league kill leader as of when Danny traded this thing to me. I'm sure some of you remember what I could do with Ursaluna back during the BBRD League, and its Bloodmoon counterpart is arguably even more dangerous. Its Mind's Eye ability is insane, effectively serving as a combination of Scrappy and Keen-Eye all in one. At least without Scrappy's new use of blocking Intimidate, but that's irrelevant with this specially offensive monster. Bloodmoon Ursaluna's bulk is also absurd, at least on the physical side, and its speed isn't too great, but this thing can be a very useful tank that offensively does not care if you're a ghost type because you're not immune to things like Priority Vacuum Wave or Stab Hyper Voice. Stab Earth Power is also incredibly strong from this thing, and it can set up with Calm Mind, heal up with Moonlight, gets moves like Moonblast and Focus Blast for coverage, and it can even use Body Press pretty effectively as well. Its greatest weapon, however, is definitely its Bloodmoon attack. It's base 140 power, and the only real drawbacks are its low PP and the fact that it cannot be selected twice in a row for use, which aren't really too bad as far as drawbacks go, considering the other options at its disposal. Before you start thinking that Bloodmoon Ursaluna's speed is going to be an issue, however, allow me to move on to Slowking. Going back to the BBRD League again, you probably remember that I had Porygon 2 to set up Trick Room for Ursaluna to thrive, and the same idea applies here with Slowking for Bloodmoon Ursaluna. Slowking is also a fantastic defensive mon, with its great special bulk and very usable physical bulk as well. It can also pivot around using Chilly Reception to be able to activate its Regenerator ability. It's got boosting options like Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, and even Iron Defense. Tons of coverage options from Flamethrower to Ice Beam to even Grass Knot. And tons of great stab options as well, including Scald, which it got access to once again, and Psychic Noise to also block healing. Slowking can be a very frustrating force to try and take down, and I think I could get a lot of mileage out of what Slowking can bring to the table for me. Next up is a very familiar face for the Swoo banner in Infernape, who many of you might recall as the mon I would argue was our team MVP back during Season 3, despite that season not panning out too well for us. Infernape is fairly fast at base 108 speed, and has very good offensive stats to be a versatile threat in just about any role I could put it into. It can set rocks, has quite a bit of utility, and can hit hard on both ends of the offensive spectrum, not to mention having stab priority in both Mach Punch and Vacuum Wave, the former of which can even be boosted by its Iron Fist ability. Infernape is a tricky mon to try and crack in prep, and hopefully with it back under my wing, I can have a much better showing with it than I did 2 seasons ago. Now we move on to Archaludon, which might seem like a weird mon for my team since it arguably fares the best in Rain, where its signature Electro Shot move doesn't need to charge. But I can still get a lot of use out of yet another mon I've never really gotten the chance to try all that much before now, draft or otherwise. Both of its offensive stats are really solid, and base 130 defense combined with a Steel Dragon type combination certainly makes it a tough mon to muscle through. Even ignoring Electro Shot and any shenanigans I can still pull to weaponize it, Archaludon still has Thunderbolt for electric coverage along with a similar move in Meteor Beam, along with Body Press and Aura Sphere. It can set rocks, it can phase, it works as a dual screener, and has really solid stab options to boot, so it'll be interesting getting to test drive Archaludon and see what I can make happen with it regardless of the weather situation. Skipping over our old friend Whimsicott, let's move on to Mimikyu, another mon who I've used in draft in the past to mixed results, admittedly. But it's still a solid mon with a lot I can make use of, especially with its Disguise ability basically guaranteeing it can take a free hit. It can set up light screens, it's another Trick Room setter, it's got moves like Curse and Destiny Bond that could royally screw over opponents' plans. It can set up with Swords Dance or Bulk Up. Mimikyu honestly could add a lot of tricks to my arsenal if I play my cards right, especially with a base 96 speed and base 105 special defense to work with, alongside a very usable base 90 attack stat. Mimikyu makes up for the ghost half of Dragapult, and Noivern covers the dragon half. Base 123 speed may not be as fast as Dragapult, but it's still incredibly fast in this meta, and makes Noivern tricky to outrun. Base 97 special attack is also still incredibly useful given the wide array of coverage options this thing gets access to. Dragon Flying is an interesting stab combination that Noivern has to play with. It can defog to keep hazards off my side of the field. It has access to Super Fang to quickly weaken opposing walls. It's not as versatile as Dragapult was, but Noivern's got some flexibility I think I can certainly weaponize as we navigate the rest of the season. Especially with two very useful abilities in the familiar Infiltrator, as well as Frisk to scout for opposing items, so I'm not caught off guard by anything like, say, Mirror Herbs or Resist Berries. Skipping over Electros, who I really still need to bring to a game at this point, let's talk about Mabosstiff. This is an interesting mod I haven't really played around with too much, especially since it's got some interesting tools at its disposal. Picking it up means I still technically have at least one Dark type with Intimidate, but it also gets access to Guard Dog to block opposing Intimidate, and get a boost instead alongside with being impossible to phase out. Kinda wish I had the thing against Kelly last week now. There's also the Stakeout ability, which allows it to do double damage against anything that switches in on that same turn, and with base 120 attack, you know that's going to hurt. Mabosstiff actually gets a solid array of coverage moves and some interesting utility options as well, so I'm actually kind of excited to see what this dog can do. Now we move on to my brand new Terra Captains, and the first one honestly needs no introduction. Anybody who watched my UNPL Spring Fling run already knows what kind of threat Cryogonal is in my hands as a Terra Captain, especially considering it pretty much single-handedly pulled us back from the brink of defeat during the finals. Terra makes Cryogonal a lot more versatile than you'd first think because of what Terra Blast can become as coverage, especially since I picked Electric as one of its Terra types, which, when combined with Levitate, not only gives this mon no weaknesses, but also allows for the fabled Bolt Beam coverage. Freeze Dry allows it to still hit water types super effectively as well. It can Rapid Spin to keep hazards off my side of the field, and as I proved during Spring Fling, that base 50 defense stat is not quite as exploitable as opponents might think, considering I can use either Acid Armor or Iron Defense to quickly fix that and recover to stay healthy. Plus, since Slowking can set up Snow thanks to Chilly Reception, Cryogonal could also set up Aurora Veils for me if I play my cards right. So that is an option that opponents also have to keep in the back of their mind whenever they see Slowking and Cryogonal both on the same team I bring to a game. Last but not least, we have Muck, who in Draft has kind of seen a resurgence even when compared to its Alolan counterpart. And I think making it my other Terra Captain and flipping some of its usual weaknesses will play a big role in showing that off. This mon is an incredibly solid special tank with a good attack stat. Sticky Hold will keep it from losing its item, as Kelly so eloquently demonstrated against me with his Dipplin. And then there's Poison Touch, which allows all of Muck's contact moves to have a 30% chance to poison the opponent. When combined with something like the 30% chance that's already attached to moves like Poison Jab, moves like Curse to quickly make this thing into a nigh unstoppable tank that thrives in Trick Room, Toxic Spikes, and a whole smorgasbord of coverage and other utility options, yeah, I think Muck will make for a very solid mon to round out our new team. So, that's going to do it. What do you guys think of my new roster? Do you think I've made some mistakes by letting myself get talked into joining this tsunami of transactions? Feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know, and don't be afraid to hold back. I'm willingly opening myself up if you want to take any shots at me for these transactions, especially since I'm being honest and upfront about kind of regretting making them. But, time will tell as to whether or not they will somehow work out for me, and hopefully, you all are willing to stick with me for the rest of the season as we find out together. So, with all of that said, thank you guys so very much for watching. I have been Ruppy, and my brand new Columbus Swoo roster and I will see you all later this week for Week 4 of the UNPL and the debut of many of these brand new beasts. Take care, guys.